are you today?
I'm great. We've had an extraordinarily busy few weeks in my household with a lot of youth sports. We had some illness thrown in there. So things have been a little bit chaotic, which makes me really lean into my routines even more than I usually do. How have things been with you?
They've been good. The beginning of a year always feels busier than I expect it to, and always reflect on why didn't I see this coming? Because this did happen last year too, and also the year before. I have a lot of high hopes and high expectations, but I think also, we sometimes there's a little bit of a letdown of a new year. I have two adult daughters. They don't live in the same state as I do. I got to spend a lot of time with them with holidays and vacation, and now they are back in their lives, and there's a little adjustment going there. Actually, related to this topic, I was talking to my older daughter the other day, and I was talking to her while she was doing some household chores, and I was saying,
Ah,
"Oh, I should probably do that. I'm not real good at that anymore without you two in the house." And she was like, "Oh, that's why you had us do all that work and help you." And I'm like, "No, that's
yes.
not why. I mean, that was a side benefit."
Yeah, I felt when we had some illnesses going through my house this month that like maybe I could have gotten some other people that I live with slightly more on board with some tasks that were falling by
Mhm,
the
mhm.
wayside because I was one of the people that was on the couch for a few days and some of the wheels came off, not all of them.
Yeah.
But so let me ask you this, Rachel, when you were a kid, did you have household chores to do?
Yeah, absolutely. We had, it's probably a little bit, the history of my memory is probably faded and been embellished a bit over the years, but my parents were big on contributing to the household and earning things, or that we had privileges. You didn't just get to do stuff. You had to be a
Mhm.
contributing member of this family. Even also, they had us contributing in the community and volunteering. Tourism was a big deal in my family when I was a kid, and it is now for me as an adult. But just giving back, being part of something bigger than myself, which is one of the reasons I think chores and responsibilities for kids is so important. That was just built into the family system when I was growing up, and I
Yeah.
never even thought, I didn't even know there was a thing, as some families don't do that. It just seemed like what
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah, so that's why we decided to talk about this
Yeah.
today because I think obviously every family system and culture is wildly different and what's
Mhm,
right for your
mhm.
family is not right for my family, etc. But chores, household chores, there's just work that goes into running a home. Okay, whether you live
Mhm.
in a tiny apartment or a gigantic house, there's just stuff that needs to get done. The trash needs to get taken out. The dishes need to be washed. The floors need to be swept. It's just stuff. And we, as busy parents, working parents, most of us who listen to this podcast, it's a lot to throw on top of a very busy week. So
Mhm.
let's get these
Mhm.
kids involved. Let's get them on board. And Rachel and I
Right.
are going to talk to you today about how to do this, what kind of chores we can be giving these children, and also why it's important. So maybe we should start there, Rachel. Let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about the why.
Right.
Why we let's sell this to our listeners. Why should you give
Yeah.
your young children household responsibilities?
So it's not to have the job done perfectly. That is not what you're going to get out of this. So let's get that out of the way right at the top. And that is not why you're doing it. You will get some things done, which is a huge bonus. And if you can see it for the gift it is, then that's great. But that's not why you're doing it. We're not after perfection here, and actually that makes this not effective if you are after perfection. So what we know about child development and what is good for children, and again, this is really important no matter what for children. So we really have to think about, even if you have the resources and
Mhm.
family structure that they don't need to do anything, they still should. Because when children have a responsibility to something greater than themselves, they learn a lot about themselves. They build their self concept. Who
Mhm.
am I as a
Mhm.
person in this family? Who am I as a person in this world? What am I capable of? How can I contribute? And am I a valuable contributor? I mean, just that alone is a reason to do this. Just knowing that if you let your child out of all household responsibilities or family responsibilities and someone else does it for them, they don't learn some of those things.
Mhm.
They do struggle. Like, what's the point of me? Am I important in this family? As I just get to I'm just a consumer versus also a contributor. Those
Yeah.
are all lifelong skills and workplace skills too. You need to be able to pitch in. And you need
Yeah,
to be able to see where, I see a problem and I am capable of contributing to the solution. So just that alone, those things alone.
totally agree. It makes you part of that community, and it's
Hmm.
why we aside we can talk more about this later, but we have this in our classrooms too at Bright Horizons.
Yep.
Children are
Yep.
contributors
Mm.
to their environment and helpers. And when I was thinking about this topic, I realized another huge benefit in my home. I've got three children who are, teenagers and an elementary schooler. And I've really noticed, especially with my middle child who's 13, one of his many regular chores is taking the recycling out. And
Mhm.
he frequently waits to, we have an open bin in the kitchen, and he'll wait too long. And he's walking through the kitchen out to the garage, and there's stuff falling all over the place. The soda cans rolling away, or the cereal box is falling. And
Mhm.
I see him getting frustrated, and he's got to figure out how to manage those feelings and get the
Mhm.
job
Mhm.
done. And the
Mhm.
stakes are so low, but the practice is so good, right? This is
Right.
something that he's got to do pretty much every day, every other day. And sometimes it goes great. And sometimes there's a big mess he's got to clean up, but
Mhm.
it's his responsibility and he's got to navigate those feelings.
Yep, he's
It's
got it.
good
And then,
practice.
there's like, so there's something there too that you're doing that I think we should call out is you're not freaking out, probably. I'm going to make the assumption when the can hits the floor and maybe a little something comes out of that can and needs to be wiped up. And like,
Right.
that's part of it, right? That's part of, you waited too long. So now you have this issue. It's like
Mhm.
immersive experiential learning happening right there too about I have caused the problem I'm now experiencing. And I also have to deal with some extra things. Like, and now I'm going to have to go clean that up
That's it.
too. And
That's it.
that whole piece of it is really good. The routine of it, the multi-step direction. So we're going to talk about this even with like young
Mhm.
toddlers. You can start with
Yeah.
this, and that being able to follow a one-step direction, that's good cognitive development when they're toddlers.
Mhm.
Two-step directions when they're a little bit older, three-step directions when they're a little older, having some routine and ritual to it. At learning something that takes fine motor skills or making decisions, you can scaffold the complexity of that, and it helps with all these other developmental skills as well. And the
Yep.
other thing that's so important that I don't want to miss is children learn some good impulse control and delayed
Mhm.
gratification. So I can't
Yes.
just get and just do the things that I want to do. I need to do some things that contribute. And when we talk about we want our kids to be happy, in fact, what drives happiness is not contributing. It is actually feeling important and having purpose. So this
Right.
also contributes to good mental health. And kids won't tell you that. They won't say, when I get to help with laundry, I feel great about myself. Way better than if you just let me sit on the couch and play video games. They're never going to say that, but it
Right.
is actually true.
Yes, absolutely. So it's building some executive function skills. We're making them feel like responsible people. We're
Mhm.
giving them that flair of independence. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Even if they don't actively consciously realize it, there is a sense of satisfaction that comes from a
Mhm.
job that's done. Maybe it's
Mhm.
not done perfectly. Maybe it's not a job well done sometimes,
Right.
but
Right.
it's done, right?
Right. They have
It,
some purpose. If
yes.
there's a reason they are there, it matters. And as they get a little older too, you want to think about how they can make a choice about how to do it. So they get some a term that probably a lot of people have heard more and more lately is this idea of agency, meaning
Mhm.
if you have agency, that means you can plan, you're kind of working in your own best interest, and you feel like you can do something purposeful and meaningful. You are captain of your own ship a little bit. So yeah, you have to do the laundry, but you have some choices about how you do it or how you get there, or whatever. So that there's just, we could go on, right? I think
Yeah.
we've sold everybody on why this is important. But it's that, and we haven't even covered all of it. These are
No,
these are and it's not just chores, it's also just being committed to the family and responsible
that's
for
right.
contributing, but chores is a great way to do it.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought of one more before we move on,
Yeah.
which is that
Okay.
imagine your child having a college roommate someday or a partner and sharing a space with someone who's not you or their siblings. I mean, Rachel, this is your life, right? Like you've watched
Yeah.
your children
Yeah.
now. They are out there in the world living with people who aren't you.
Yeah.
And they know how to clean a toilet and they probably know how to fold their laundry. Like just let's
Mhm.
oh, that yes, like let's not think of them as chores. Let's think of them as life skills. You're
Right.
giving your
Yeah, that's
children
a
life
great.
skills.
Yep. That's a great way to put it. And we talk about this all the time on this podcast, is you're raising a future adult. That's what you're playing the long game here. So what do you want them to be capable of when they're not in your house? And you have to start young, or I mean, if you haven't started young, you can still implement it. It's going to be a little harder to get it going, but you should still do it. It's funny that you say that, because I had a college roommate who was, one day she was dusting baseboards, and I honestly never knew that was a thing. I'm like, wow, my mom must have been doing this without me ever noticing once. So poor mom, and thank you, mom. But that stuck in my head. I was like, that's a thing you do? You have to do that? You have to dust the things? So now, and then I taught my girls, I'm like, we got to know about dusting the baseboards. I can't let you go off to college without knowing how to do that. And I am definitely not someone who has ever been called a neat freak, but for some reason that came up to me because I noticed my college roommate. And then when my older daughter went off to college, she called me and was like, oh, my roommate doesn't take the garbage out, and she doesn't know about the baseboards, and she doesn't know. And so she noticed it right away that someone hadn't been contributing to the household.
Yeah, it's not a great look. It's not a great look for an adult. For a young adult, we give the young adults a little bit of leeway maybe, but I'm telling you, what a turnoff the first time you share a space with an adult person as a roommate or as a partner. And it's, anyway.
But and I think what we're saying, like, we're lighthearted about this, but it's not about, and I just want to be clear about this, it is not about having a perfectly clean house. Right. You could, if that's what's important to you, that's important to you. That's not one of my priorities in life, to have a perfectly clean house, but it is about my priorities were about raising humans that understood that they contributed, and when they didn't, that they were taking away from the relationship, that they had a role to play, a contributing role to play. They were responsible, and that they mattered. It mattered that they did that, and they themselves mattered, that they were there to contribute. And that is the goal here that we have for everyone.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about what types of household chores or life skills you can give your children, and some tips for making it easier.
Did you know that you can get the Teach, Play, Love brand of learning for your preschooler every day? The very people you trust for parenting advice are behind our Bright Horizons preschool program. Learning adventures that inspire kids to reach their unique potential. One-of-a-kind preschool for your one-of-a-kind kid. That's Bright Horizons. Enrollment is happening now. Visit brighthorizons.com to find a center near you.
Okay, welcome back. We are talking about chores and household responsibilities for children. And we're going to talk about how you can incorporate this with young children, which may feel surprising. Let's start with that question really quickly, Rachel. Parents ask me all the time, okay, when can I start giving my children chores?
Yeah. I mean, pretty soon. Maybe not the newborn, right? But toddlers, definitely toddlers. And you can judge based on what makes sense for your child. So let's give you a couple examples of the easy ones that you can do with a young child. And then you'll get a sense of how young this can happen. Putting toys away. I mean, a 1-year-old can help with this, and you can hand them, one-step directions. Let's stick with that.
One step.
And repetitive things, putting their toys away. Taking the toys out of the bathtub, putting the toys in the bathtub, getting the book off the shelf, putting the book back on the shelf, just that you're not doing all those things for them, and that you acknowledge them as, thank you for helping. I need you to help me. I wonder if you can, what do you think? So you're prompting that responsibility. You're prompting that it's them that's doing it, that you need them, that they're contributing, that you're grateful for that, just that you have that exchange back and forth. Maybe putting clothes in the hamper. And maybe it's they are setting the table, or giving everyone a napkin, or putting their plate down, or getting their cup wherever it is. We do this in our centers and schools. And first of all, I always look at the job charts in the centers and schools. Some of them are pretty creative and interesting. Yeah. We have like waste management instead of trash collector, what sometimes, or art curator, or
the electrician turns out the classroom lights.
Yeah. I mean, turning the lights off when you leave a room. What a good thing to be responsible for. Or one of them I just saw not that long ago was an art curator, but basically it was choosing the piece of art to go on the wall. So it could be like choosing the piece of art that's going to go on the refrigerator or in a specific frame or whatever. So you
Love
can
that.
give them some choice there. And you, again, like a 1-year-old who's just toddling around can put a toy away, can get a book. So you can
Yeah.
start young with that. As they get a little bit older, you think about that progression of memory retention and complexity. Not too complicated, though. Maybe
Right.
2-step directions. I need you to
Right.
do this, and then you will do this. And having it be a routine is really important.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I remember about my parents is we had routine jobs, and then we also had a jar of non-routine
Ooh.
jobs. And if we needed to, I believe, and then also you could choose if you want some extra credit to take some jobs out of there and do maybe I just never pulled the baseboards one. Maybe that's what happened, but there were things that just didn't need to happen all the time or every week. So you can throw a few things in there that aren't the typical, or you can always, once you've built up this routine of them helping and that they're part of getting ready for things, then or doing something, then when you do need to get ready for something, maybe you're going to a sporting event and it's not something you do every week. So you're asking them to do a little extra help. You'll
Yeah.
have that language down. They'll know where things are. You'll know what to expect from them. And it won't feel odd to them that you're asking them to contribute.
Yeah. I
So,
really, it's such great advice. The
yeah,
earlier you start this, the easier it will be to make
right.
it a routine and and it just that expectation that we help each other around this
Yep.
house. So
Yep.
then when the odd thing comes up, it's less of a fight.
And then
Speaking as a parent of
when
teenagers,
you,
that's true.
yeah, teenagers for sure. If you wait till they're teenagers, you're definitely going to be harder. But I think what you're saying, I was jumping in to just build on that is, so if you have waited and you haven't done this yet and you're listening to this and your child's a little bit older, ease in. So don't all of a
Mhm.
sudden go with make your bed, empty the dishwasher, feed the dog, and take out the trash.
Right.
That's going to cause you a lot of power struggles. But
Mhm.
maybe it is starting with something like that. Maybe they don't even know that they're doing or a chore, and you're getting them to like, oh, I was wondering, can you help me, like I need your advice on this, and help get them kind of engaged in the process of the contribution. And
Mhm.
then maybe even asking them, I think we all need to start taking on some household chores. Here's about 10 that need to happen. What are some that you would, you pick two, or figure out your way to ease into it. Don't avoid it, but don't go all in right away if you haven't done it yet.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. There's just a lot more that young children are capable of than I think a lot of families realize. So you mentioned a lot of great ones. And again, building those chores around routines, things that happen all the time. So if you always do laundry on the weekends, then one of your preschoolers' chores is going to be matching the socks. And preschoolers love to sort stuff and they love to match things because their cognitive development is asking them to practice this. So you can make it a little math activity. How many socks do you count? But you don't even have to make it that complicated. It can be like, hey, it's time. We're folding the laundry together. You know what your job is. Do you remember what your job is? Remember we talked about this last week? So working on that memory a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Meal times are a great time. Clearing the plates. Preschoolers can start clearing plates after dinner, moving things over to next to the sink. As they get taller, they can start washing dishes. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
things may break. We already talked about this. You're not aiming for perfection here. I taught my youngest that he was in charge around when he was maybe, I think, 4 or 5 years old. We got our dog, and our dog sheds a lot. So he became our household vacuumer. And because it was just something that had to happen a lot more frequently, and I didn't have time. So rather than take on that burden myself, I said, hey, you've been here long enough. You're going to start vacuuming. And it was adorable. The vacuum cleaner was almost as tall as he was, but like he really felt like such a big shot that this was his chore. I built it up as like, this is a big deal. This is a big job. I know we all love the dog, and the dog really needs us to help her because we have to brush her, and then we have all this fur. And he did a lousy job at this chore when he was 4 or 5 years old. I really can't remember what year it was that I introduced it. It was, I mean, whole sections of the carpet he was missing. But didn't he have a smile on his face? And he would wrap the cord up at the end and get it all knotted and tangled. And he'd say, okay, great, I'm all done, and walk away. And that's how that went for quite a while. Now he's 10 and he still vacuums. He still does it a few times a week, not every single day, but and there's no fight. There's no resistance. Me saying, oh, and I have to remind him sometimes, that's okay. Hey, I think it's time to vacuum the floor. He goes, okay, I'll do it when I'm done with my homework. I'll do it when I'm done with, whatever I'm doing. It's great. And he started that when he was so young, so
Yeah.
young.
Yeah, it's just built into the system now. I think one of the things that we should probably say just flat out is if there's something that you're really particular about, don't give that job away.
Yeah.
So if you like the laundry to be done exactly this one way, or the dishwasher loaded exactly this one way, and you're not even going to be able to sleep unless that happens, then don't give that job to your
That's right.
child, or give
That's
them
right.
a part that's okay with you, like rinsing the dishes. Because that, you don't want this to feel like a negative experience. You don't want to be correcting your child's contribution.
Mhm.
We don't like that. It doesn't feel good to us as adults. It certainly doesn't feel
No.
good as children. And it kind of negates the message of like, you matter and your contribution matters, because
Yeah.
you're basically telling them, I mean, kind of it does, but you're not doing it right, and I have to fix it. So you don't want to do that. So find the things, even if it's like alphabetizing the spice cupboard that you could care less about, but that there's a job there, right? There's something they can do. You might have to find some things that don't matter to you, or that maybe someone else could do them, but it is good for your child. Maybe it's like pulling weeds or helping raking or whatever it might be. Holding the dustpan. That was one of my favorites for when my kids were little, is you just hold the dustpan, and sometimes we would get stuff in there and sometimes we wouldn't, but that's okay. They left the room and then I finished it all up.
That's
I
right.
love the folding one because it does a lot of good stuff for fine motor skills too. And there's some math in there, but I love having kids fold towels and washcloths, because they have to do like some matching of corners. And that is, again, if you don't want a messily folded towel in your closet, then, you might not want to give that one to them. But I would encourage you to think that it's worth the messily folded towel for the skills that child is going to get beyond the contribution of the goals. Pets, that's a good one. Pets, pet care. You were talking about feeding the dog, or cleaning up the pet fur, and they feel really responsible for that dog or animal in the house, feeding the fish, whatever. Make sure you have a measuring so you don't overfeed, help them be successful. And then they can start to take care of things that relate to themselves too, as they get older. So getting their backpack ready the night before. Maybe it's even picking out clothes for the week. It is getting, keeping their bathroom tidy, meal prep, helping make the sandwiches for the week, or whatever it is they're going to have. Yeah, just start taking self-responsibility as well. And that can happen even as they're 4 or 5 years old, they can start to do those things. And you'll really be glad that they're starting to do those things once they get into grade school and older.
Oh, yeah. I have a news flash for families, and I wish I'd done this sooner with my oldest. Elementary school kids can do their own laundry. It turns out it's not a very complicated task. And there is now I am here to tell you that all 3 of my children do their own laundry. And it might be my biggest parenting accomplishment. I mean, mic drop. Like, I can't believe I didn't do this sooner with my oldest. And I think I can't remember how old she was when she started, but my son, my youngest, started doing his own laundry when he was 9 years old. Now, it was easier because I had a front-loading washing machine, so he can easily reach in, but you can get a stool. My middle son, he started unloading the dishwasher when he was about 10 years old. Again, I wish I'd started sooner. He wasn't tall enough to get the plates, so he would stack them up, and then he got a stool, and he figured it out. And I was in the room the first few times he did it, but I was very, very intentional to busy myself with things. So he knew I wasn't, being too controlling or micromanaging him. But out of the corner of my eye, I said, well, didn't he figure that out? He realized pretty quickly. He knew where the plates went. He looked around. I thought he almost asked me for help. And then I saw him. He said, I can do this. And it's like, yes, you can. And he did it. And we have some plates that have been broken, but that's okay. It's all in the sacrifice to the raising a future adult. That's how it is.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you need a couple dollar store plates for a while to get you through this situation, or you make some different decisions about the things you're going to use and the value of the responsibility and the contributions higher than some of the other things. that feel important, but really in the long run are less important. So
That's right.
I do want to talk for a moment about incentivizing, because that happens a lot, like
Yes.
sticker charts or reward systems or treasure boxes or whatever. And I would say there's a lot of research on incentives, and the research on incentives will tell us that people quickly start to do it for the incentive, even if originally they started to do it just for the fun of it or the intellectual challenge, whatever it might be. So be cautious about incentives, because they teach the message that you should do it if there's something in it for you, rather than you should do it. So my recommendation always was with incentives, based on all the research, is that if you want to get something started, you could certainly get some incentives going, because you're creating a habit or a behavior, and then start to do some intermittent incentivizing. Like, if you do this for 3 weeks in a row, such and such might happen, but that's not a continued incentive, or it's just a one time. So you're starting to get something going, or you're trying to get something to going, but you really wanted to build it as a habit. So it's just part of being part of the family. You're contributing. That's the incentive. Once in a while, if there's a special thing, or you really got to get out of the house, you need everyone to contribute to something, you can do that, of course, because that's a one-time thing. If you're looking for a one-time thing, you need people to do something differently for this one time. If incentives and a little bit of developmentally appropriate bribery is your thing, then that's where you should put it.
Yes.
Not in the day-to-day, not in the only.
Yes.
They could earn a sticker to show that they did it, not to be earning a prize, if that difference makes sense. So they can, like, an acknowledgement that they successfully contributed for the day. So just caution us, because we really rely on stickers and incentives and treats and things. And it does send an actual message that we don't really want to send, about the only reason to do it is for the outcome. And if you get something, it's the same thing with like incentivizing grades or incentivizing winning. We accidentally make it seem like that's the only thing that matters. And then we start a behavior of not doing it for the thing, for the learning, for the contribution, for the love of the game. We start to incentivize you. You're only doing it for the prize, for the incentive. So just a caution there that feels really important in this conversation.
So praising the effort, and even noticing things like, oh, I saw you tried to go to vacuum the outside of the rug and move to the center. Well, that was a creative idea. How did that go? Ask them questions about it. It makes them feel like, oh, I've got important ideas and I'm the boss of this job. And again, all that stuff we said at the top of the podcast, but just there's ways to reward behavior with your praise, with your attention. Children they want to connect with you.
Absolutely.
So if you connect with them about their chore, right? I know it may sound boring, but they will be excited that you asked them about that.
That you noticed their contribution, right? I'm so grateful. I don't know how I would have gotten that done without you. That really mattered that you helped me. Just phrases like that. That is because that's real. That's a positive, natural consequence that they have earned some praise for their effort. And this is where I'm going to bring us all the way back to the beginning here. This is not about perfection. Do not only compliment them if they vacuum every piece of the floor in the rows exactly the way you want them to be. Compliment them for their effort, for their autonomy, for their motivation, for their growth, and just because they are part of this family and they are contributing. And that will feel really good to you as a parent, and it will feel really, really good to your child as they're building up their cognitive, physical, and social emotional learning skill sets, all through just doing some household chores.
Get parenting advice from Rachel and Claire. You can leave them a voicemail by calling 617-673-8881, and your question may be answered in a future episode of Teach, Play, Love. You can also send them an email at teach.playlove@brighthorizons.com. For more expert guidance on early childhood development, check out our family resources at brighthorizons.com.
Thanks for listening.
Subscribe to us. Find more episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
See you next time on Teach, Play, Love.
And discover parenting as the joy it was meant to be.